implementation of this agreement to ensure lasting stability in Mali. Here, I welcome the high-level decision-making meeting that was held last August. That meeting was followed up by the 6th high-level meeting of the Agreement Monitoring Committee that was held on the 2nd of September in Bamako. All of these meetings allowed us to lift a number of obstacles that had hitherto hindered the implementation of the agreement. The 46th session of the Agreement Monitoring Committee was held on the 11th of October 2022 and allowed stakeholders to renew their commitment to a lasting peace. Here, I would like to welcome the committed involvement of international mediation efforts under the leadership of Algeria, and I thank all international mediators for their support. As you are aware, in terms of the DDR process, Malian parties agreed upon the integration of 26,000 former combatants by 2024. Moreover, I'm increasingly pleased by the increasingly active and significant participation of women and young people in the peace process. Alongside this, the government of Mali is constantly striving to promote peace and peaceful coexistence, and proof of this is the first edition of the National Week of Reconciliation that occurred last month and was celebrated across national territory but also by the Malian diaspora. Mr. President, like the Secretary General himself, many of you have expressed your concern at the security situation. I took due note of your comments, and I share many of your concerns as expressed around this table. The report being considered would have become more objective, Mr. President, however, if it provided more information regarding the efforts undertaken by the government and the progress made by the government in terms of ensuring greater security across national territory and its efforts and success in ensuring the protection of civilian population. Since December 2021, the Defense and Security Forces of Mali have conducted major military security operations which have destroyed several safe havens of terrorists. They've also seized many arms and warmongering materials and have freed many local areas from the terrorist threat and have fostered the return of displaced persons. The Defense and Security Forces of Mali are growing in power, and that is being noted and appreciated by the people. The government remains determined to preventing and thwarting indiscriminate attacks that are being visited upon our populations, as well as reprisals. Moreover, the government has an integrated strategy for the center of the country that focuses on, of course, purely security issues, but also favors political approaches and approaches focusing on social, economic, and cultural development. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, the Malian authorities are fully cognizant of the fact that responding to security threats alone will not be enough to restore peace and stability in our country. They know that it is vital to create a socio-economic environment able to provide opportunities and prospects to the people, particularly in vulnerable strata of the population, because they are vulnerable as such to harmful terrorist influences. The government is striving to restore the state's authority and to provide basic social services to people in areas still affected by insecurity. As regards the presence of state representatives across the country, measures have been taken to allow recently appointed officials, and there are many of them, more than 100, almost 200 state representatives have been recently appointed. Measures have been taken so that they can be deployed after their training. This training includes modules on elections, the MINUSMA mandate, but also modules on basic social services. In this regard, a myriad of public initiatives are underway to offer education to the largest possible number of children in conflict-affected areas. That's also a significant concern of our government. That is to provide education to all children, even those in displaced person camps. They must be able to continue to follow a decent education. Still discussing security now, Mr. President, it is surprising that in terms of relaying facts, the Secretary General's report did not say anything about the fact that on the 15th of August 2022, the Security Council discussed the invasion by French forces of the Malian airspace and the attempts to destabilize Mali. That wasn't sufficiently discussed by the Security Council, and that must be pointed out. These acts of aggression are incredibly serious and are a violation of the United Nations Charter and of international law. These acts must be followed up, and you must be compelled to action. And these acts were not discussed by the Council when it discussed Mali on the 15th of August. There needs to be a specific meeting of the Security Council which will make it possible for us to bring to light evidence regarding duplicitous acts, acts of espionage, and acts of destabilization waged by France against Mali, including including the fact that we need to share evidence of material being given to criminal groups and this is an act that have given rise to destabilization affecting the civilian population. The Security Council must, of course, shoulder its primary responsibility for the maintenance of peace and security at an international level. We've also collected international and local public opinion on what's going on in Mali. The public and the international community must be told properly about the factors leading to insecurity, destabilization, and the expansion of terrorism in the Sahel. They need that opportunity. Mali denounces the proxy war that's being fought on its territory. We also are speaking out against all impediments to the holding of this specific meeting of the Security Council, which will bring the truth to light about what's going on in the Sahel. The government of Mali reserves the right to exercise its right to self-defense in line with Article 51 of the United Nations Charter, but also in line with letter number 0444/MAECI dated the 15th of August. That was a letter that the government of Mali sent to the Security Council. Mali reserves the right to exercise its right to self-defense if France continues to undermine the sovereignty of our country and to undermine its territorial integrity and its national security. On the issue of human rights, I'm delighted at the fact that there has been a decreasing number of human rights violations noted in the reporting period. However, contrary to the unfounded allegations and the allegations deliberately propagated, military operations undertaken by the Malian Defense and Security Forces are conducted in stringent compliance with human rights principles and international humanitarian law. In line with its zero-tolerance policy, the government of Mali, through its military justice system, has tried several offences that are within the remit of military tribunals, and a number of investigation procedures and trials have been opened. Some of these are being prepared at the military tribunal, and other trials are underway. We have these measures, but we also have inquiries that have been opened to seek truth, and our criminal code is also being reread, as is our criminal procedure code and as is our military justice code, so that we can properly deal with these situations. Here, I welcome the support extended by MINUSMA with the holding of the second hearing of the Mopti Military Tribunal, and I also welcome MINUSMA's support with the 3 hearings within the Douentza jurisdiction, and I welcome the contribution that MINUSMA has made to improving the conditions in detention centres in a number of prisons in the centre of the country. We have allegations being made against us. These aren't gospel truth. They need to be underpinned by objective evidence. And that's not always the case in the report. However, I say here in unequivocal terms, the government of Mali remains staunchly opposed to the instrumentalization and the politicization of human rights issues with the purpose of destabilizing Mali, of intimidating us or blackmailing us. Moreover, it is equally regrettable to note that a number of United Nations mechanisms supposedly put in place to help countries in crisis are being instrumentalized by external powers. In this vein, the government of Mali notes with regret the fact that the United Nations group of experts on sanctions on Mali, created pursuant to Resolution 2374 of 2017, is increasingly straying beyond the confines of its mandate, both in terms of events it considers and in terms of its theatre of operation, which is exclusively limited to the northern regions of our countries that are concerned by the implementation of the agreement. The government has always worked, and in good faith, with mechanisms related to the sanctions regime, namely with the Sanctions Committee. We have a good relationship with that Sanctions Committee, of course. However, we are considering re-evaluating our cooperation with the group of experts in light of the fact that it needs to respect the precise confines of its mandate. We are going to write to the Security Council about this matter. Regarding the humanitarian situation, the Malian government remains gravely concerned by the precarious situation of Malian refugees in neighboring countries. Here, I wish to thank neighboring countries for their hospitality shown towards our people. The government is also closely following the cases of thousands of displaced persons, including their children, at a time when the school doors are once again opening for a new year. We are conscious of the fact that the funds necessary to meet humanitarian needs have only been mobilized to the tune of 28%, and we're worried by that. But I do want to reassure our compatriots here. The government of Mali is continuing to strive to meet not only the needs of Malian people on site, and displaced persons on site, but also to facilitate their return to their place of origin safely and with full dignity. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the Security Council, I also took due note of your comments and observations regarding the operational challenges facing MINUSMA. The government of Mali has made arrangements to deal with the departure of the French Barkhane force. There is therefore no security vacuum. Consequently, we invite MINUSMA to fully cooperate with Malian stakeholders in order to ensure the effectiveness of both parties' actions on the ground.
Qu'est-ce qui se passe? I don't know. Just everything was ready. What? It's because. Speaking of the Secretary General not being here, he is on his way to India, where he will arrive in the coming hours in Mumbai. Tomorrow he will talk to students at the Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay, and discuss the partnership between India and the United Nations and strengthening South-South cooperation. He will also take part in an event celebrating the 75th anniversary of India's independence. He will also discuss the many challenges we face, from dealing with climate change to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. This morning, the Security Council members heard a briefing from El Ghassim Wane, the head of our peacekeeping mission in Mali. He highlighted the progress in the transition and peace process, but also spoke about his concern linked to the security situation in the country. He said that the UN peacekeeping mission strives to better protect civilians, adding that the needs on the ground far outweigh MINUSMA's ability within the current resources. Also, you will have seen in a statement we issued earlier today, we learned with great sadness that a fourth peacekeeper, also from Chad, died as a result of his wounds sustained in yesterday's IED explosion in Tessalit in the Kidal region. In the statement, the Secretary General strongly condemned the attack and extended his heartfelt condolences to the government and people of Chad and his sympathies to the families of the victims. Mr. Wane will stop at the stakeout following his presentation to the council. We will let you know. I assume that'll be around 1 o'clock, if not earlier, but we'll give you a heads up. On Libya, which we haven't talked a bit in a while, I want to tell you that our special representative, Abdoulaye Batili, arrived at the end of last week in Tripoli. Following his arrival, he met with the Presidential Council leadership, Prime Minister of the Government of National Unity, Abdul Hamid Dibeiba, and the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Aguila Saleh. Previously, Foreign Minister Najla Mangoush welcomed him to the country via phone call as she was away from the country. The different Libyan stakeholders welcomed Mr. Batili and expressed their readiness to work with him to find a political solution to the conflict. He relayed to his Libyan interlocutors that the UN mission's top priority remains supporting Libya in identifying a consensual pathway towards fair, inclusive elections as soon as possible, and to ensure Libyan-owned and Libyan-led solution to the crisis. Over the next few weeks, Mr. Batili plans to consult with a wide range of stakeholders, including civil society, women and youth groups from across Libya. Update from Ukraine, this time from our colleagues at the Food and Agricultural Organization. They say they're asking for $180.4 million to strengthen Ukraine's capacity for food storage, testing, and certification, which are necessary for the export at border facilities. To date, FAO has mobilized $79.7 million, leaving a gap of about $100.7 million, which is urgently needed to support households in rural areas during the winter. According to the government, Ukraine exported 12.9 million tons of cereals, legumes, and flour in the 2022-2023 marketing year, compared to 20 million tons last year. More than 7.8 million tons of this grain and foodstuff were exported through the Black Sea Grain Initiative. FAO has also distributed more than 3,600 tons of wheat seeds to small-scale farmers and rural households. It's also delivered cash assistance to over 1,000 rural households and is aiming to reach over 40,800 households. That's about 10,000 people in the coming months. The high-level conference on international and regional border security and management cooperation to counter terrorism and prevent the movement of terrorists opened today in Dushanbe, in the capital of Tajikistan. The two-day event is co-organized by our colleagues in the UN Office of Counterterrorism, the UN Regional Center for Preventive Diplomacy in Central Asia, along with other partners. In a video message for the event, the Secretary General said that secure borders, managed in full respect of international refugee and human rights law, are critical defenses against diverse challenges, including illicit trafficking, organized crime, and the international movement of terrorists. He reiterated the UN's commitment to work hand in hand with member states in this vital undertaking. Who had asked? Ephraim, I think you had asked about Syria and cholera. So what I can tell you is that as of October 14th, the World Health Organization says there have been 15,823 suspected cases of cholera in Syria. Of those, there have been 807 confirmed cases and 68 reported deaths across the country. That's as of the 14th of October. The rise in cases is compounded by severe countrywide water shortages due to low water levels in the Euphrates, as well as drought-like conditions. Water infrastructure has also been destroyed or damaged, leaving people reliant on unsafe water sources. Our humanitarian partners said they're facing shortages in cholera supplies, such as medicines, water, sanitation, and hygiene supplies. Also in Syria, our humanitarian colleagues tell us that stepped-up fighting in the northwest of the country in the past week has resulted in civilian casualties, with people forced to flee their homes, and clashes are unfortunately continuing today. In northern Aleppo, more than 6,300 people fled their homes in last week's clashes. Food and shelter and other supplies are urgently needed to help these newly displaced people. Turning to Chad, our humanitarian colleagues tell us that more than 1 million men, women, and children in Chad are now impacted by floods in 18 out of the country's 23 provinces. Heavy rain started in early July and have quickly overwhelmed drainage channels and ponds. The southern part of the country was hit the hardest, but the flooding also struck Some eastern provinces, such as in Sila, causing rivers to overflow. In the capital, N'Djamena, several neighborhoods are entirely submerged, with people forced to flee their homes. Some 465,000 hectares of agricultural land have been destroyed, which could further aggravate the already critical food insecurity situation in the country. We and our humanitarian partners, in support of the government, have delivered food, medicines, tents, mosquito nets, solar lamps, and other items to about 200,000 people. The humanitarian community and the Chadian government's joint response plan seeks nearly $70 million to reach about 800,000 people, but so far it's only 25% funded. We are ramping up efforts to mobilize resources to reach more people. Last month, $5 million was allotted from the UN's Central Emergency Response Fund. The 2022 humanitarian response plan for Chad is only itself 38% funded. And the latest Every Woman, Every Child progress report was released today by the UN Children's Fund, the UN Population Fund, and the World Health Organization and other partners, and it shows that women's and children's health have suffered globally as a result of conflict, the COVID-19 pandemic, and climate change, which have converged with devastating impacts. Data presented in the report shows a regression across every major measure of childhood well-being, many key indicators of the Sustainable Development Goals: food insecurity, hunger, child marriage, risks from partner violence, adolescent depression, and anxiety have also increased in the last 2 years. The full report is online. And I'm sure many of you followed yesterday's briefing on Haiti. Security Council was briefed by the head of the UN mission, Helen Lalim. She said the urgency of the situation is tearing at the political and social fabric of the country. She reiterated the Secretary General's call on Haiti's partners to consider the Prime Minister's request for a specialized international armed force as a matter of urgency. Any comprehensive resolution requires a Haitian-led political solution, adding that she also called on the Council to act decisively to address the persistent scourge of insecurity and corruption in Haiti. Programming notes: tomorrow at 10:30, there'll be a briefing here by Edgar Corzo Sosa, the chair of the Committee of the Protection of the Rights of All Migrant Workers and members of their families. He will be joined by Felipe Gonzalez Morales, the Special Rapporteur on the Human Rights of Migrants. Important briefing. At noon, I will be joined by our friend Bruno Le Marquis, who is the resident coordinator and humanitarian coordinator and Deputy Special Representative of the Secretary General in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And on Thursday, I will be joined by Denise Brown, who is here in person, who is our resident coordinator, humanitarian coordinator for the United Nations in Ukraine. James.